What to do, what to do, what to do. It's your boy Daru Daru. Welcome back to Therapy Hub. We've come to heal the mind and transform the soul. This is the place where we can talk about personal growth, or we do talk about personal growth, mindset, healing, and becoming the better version of ourselves. Now, today's topic is simple but very powerful. Okay. Don't compete with anyone while building yourself. Now, I notice the reason why I want to talk about this because I noticed lately with a lot of people, including friends and family, that they somehow feel like they got to do better than the person beside them, or they got to compete um, better or compete with the person beside them. Being better is not always necessarily wrong. Everybody wants to be a better version of themselves, but when you do that versus you taking care of yourself, then you're gonna run into some barriers and have some problems. Now we live in a world where we know that comparisons is everywhere, right? Social media shows people's highlights, um, their success stories, new businesses, their dream homes, luxury vacations, major achievements. They never really show the negative side to what they're going through, and even people that are continuing to show are they'll always show the positive and the successes of their life, but they will never show the minute that they may have an unsuccessful time in their life, or they may have a a bad time in their life, and they won't show that. So, we know that because based on social media. So, it's easy to look around and feel like you're falling behind, especially when you turn on your phone all the time, you're going through your phone and you're seeing these things, and then your life is, you're here working, and you're trying to make ends meet and pay bills and and things are just not adding up for you, and you're saying, "Well, how come these people are living this great life?" But we got to remember that everybody is out, or especially with social media, it's an outward thing. It's kind of like it's demonstrating your life outside of the things that you have really going on, right? So when people post these things, it's just generally based on the good times. But here's the truth, okay? And that was the truth as well. Sorry, but this is also the truth. And your journey was never kind of meant to look like somebody else's, right? Everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different path. Everybody's been through different things in life. So sometimes your life and your story won't or doesn't align with somebody else's. When you're consistently competing with others, that's kind of when you stop focusing on your own growth. Um, because once again, when you're worried about somebody else's, or what somebody else's growth and what they're going through, you're not really necessarily determining the fact that you are a different person. So we got to always look at that, and hopefully that makes us feel better in life, and the approach that we take to other people, or the approach that we take when we're dealing with other people, is knowing that we're not somebody else. Okay, you begin measuring your progress against somebody who has a different story, different opportunities, and different struggles, and a different timeline. That that is what this that we have to stop immediately, because we need to just program in our heads that every human is different. We may look the same, we may have sometimes the same characteristics, sometimes the same traits, genetic traits, or whatever it is, similarities. But the truth and matter to it all is that every human being is different, right? I always feel that to myself, or I say to myself, that the healthiest competition that I'll ever have is the person who I was yesterday. And as people, we always got to have an open mind, and we always need to realize and need to realize that every day we do something in our lives that could maybe affect our lives, or could may affect the future of our lives, or the future of the people around us and the loved ones around us. Everything we do may affect them, or it may affect ourselves. Everything, every action that we do. So we always got to ask ourselves prior to that, or we got to ask ourselves, what is um what is the or who is the person that we were yesterday, right? What is the demon that we're going to fight yesterday, today? And the main things that, you got to ask yourself when you're doing that is, am I learning? Right? Am I learning? Because we never we we don't learn unless we know we're learning. And that may seem, oh, obviously, but like, if you think about it, is every day we learn something, but we don't really process it because it's not important, or whatever we learn is not anything that is relevant to us. But or what we learn that in that time, unless it really compels us, unless it's something that we really want to pay attention to, or that we really want to continue with. So building your life should be in that component. It should be something that we do pay attention to, our health, our mental health, um, you know, our lifestyles, people we hang around, the people we, the crowds that we keep ourselves around. Those things should be processed in our brain to continue to know, okay, are we learning from whatever, challenges or barriers that we're having. The other question we have to ask ourselves is, am I improving? Um, because every day I do the same thing. Like, I go back and I say, okay, what have I learned, and what haven't I learned? And I noticed lately, the little things, and we're going to talk about. I'm going to bring it up actually. The next question, and we need to ask ourselves is, learning to control our mental and our emotions, our mental well-being, and also to control our emotions, right? Um, so you ask yourself, am I becoming stronger mentally and emotionally? Was I who was I before, um mentally and emotionally, and am I becoming stronger? Because this is very important, and I'm going to talk about this in some other episodes in Therapy Hub. There's tons of topics in Therapy Hub to talk about. We could do this forever. um and one of the topics that I'm going to actually talk about in Therapy Hub is, you know the subconscious and the conscious mind, because I am writing a book. I don't want to tell you the title of it. I think I brought it up numerous of times, and it's been a couple few years since I've been writing this book. But the book is going to kind of determine the difference between, or it's going to teach and educate people the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The um it's going to teach people kind of like what the subconscious mind is and what it does, versus what the conscious mind does and what it is, and how they both interact with each other, and how they both can affect each other if not monitored, or if the awareness is not there, the right awareness. Okay. um but these are questions that you got to ask yourself. And also, you got to ask yourself, um am I moving closer to my goals? Okay, so I've recently just started a new um I kind of started a new uh how should I say it? Um a new thing. Just a new thing that I would do where I would kind of like write down in my book goals, and I write down, I have my calendar, and in my calendar I will put, the days, and each day how much money that I need to make that day, and how much money that I could afford to spend, like my budget and that type of thing. And I write and I kind of like put it there, and I say, okay, I need to make this amount of money this month, right? 4,700 or 3,700 or whatever the number is, right? Because they're gonna pay you, you gotta pay your rent, you gotta buy your food, and you gotta pay, if you got car insurance and payments and yada yada yada, if you got kids and whatever it is, right? Girlfriend, it all adds up, right? So you gotta be able to, I always put on my calendar, um, look, like, this is my goal for the month. This is what I need to make. And usually when I do that, it it becomes it comes into reality, because I'm kind of like throwing it in the universe, and I'm putting it in the universe that, hey, look, this is what I need to make. This is what my goal is. And I got, and then every day I work towards it, right? I get up, I look at the calendar. Okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to make. And it just, at the end of the month, it just brings everything together for me. It's been working for me. And I realize when I don't set my goals, and when I don't do it, because sometimes there'll be times where I may get too busy or I may forget about it. And when I don't do it, I notice that's when I become disorganized, and I just become all over the place, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm frustrated. I don't know what appointment that I have to go to. Sometimes I even miss appointments with customers and that type of thing, because I do own my own business. So when that happens, I kind of look into things. I kind of look into it, and I realize, I say, okay, look, I'm not setting proper goals for myself. So, and every time that I do, it actually works. So what do I need to do? I just need to kind of set more goals for myself in that sense. And because it's been working for me, right? So try it. If you're listening to this show and you're watching the show and listening, actually, because we are going to be streaming also on Spotify really soon, Apple and Spotify very soon. So y'all stay tuned for that. I'll give you information to our new stream. It's going to be kind of like a radio stream as well. So pay attention. That should be happening within a few months. So just stay posted for that. But just listening to this, ask yourself, and watching this, ask yourself, um, you know, am I, have I set any goals for myself? Have I made a goal? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be anything financial. It could be anything. It could be like, I need, because some things in life sometimes set you up for financial success. So say for instance, you don't have a driver's license, you don't have passport, ID, you need all these things. When you sit down, because I remember when I never had a driver's license, okay, and I used to sit down and say to myself, look, like, I need to set a goal, because I really need a license. I can't drive around without a license. I need to set a goal for myself. What am I going to do? And I put aside some money. I called the driving place, and they told me how much it would cost. I went online, and I actually set a goal. I said, okay, first thing I need to do, I need to study, right? So I wrote down study, and I studied for my test. This is the next thing I need to do. Um, I need to call them and set up an appointment and pay for it. So I did that. So once I got that, I said, "Oh, okay, look, I'm actually, you know, in that. I'm actually making progress now, right? I'm in the process." Then it was time for me to actually go take my test. Then I passed. I was like, "Whoa!" Now I have a G1. Can't drive by myself, but if I have somebody with me, and at that time my girlfriend had a license, so, and we had a car, and she hated driving, especially when we went, you know, up to like Ajax or something like that. Even though I couldn't drive on the highway, she would just we just cruise and take Kingston Road all the way up, down, and I would drive. And that was like my motivation to be like, yeah, look, I really need a car. Like, I need to do this. I need to be on the road again. And because I always drove before, had vehicles before, just was having always having issues with my license, getting my licenses suspended and etc. So when I finally actually had my license in my hand, I said, I'm never gonna screw this up again. Never. I'm gonna be the best driver I could be. And I had fines, so I had to go through extensions, and I had to plead to the judge and say, hey, look, like, I am a changed person, and I got kids that are, growing, and I need to be able to drive to their destinations. They live far from me, and etc. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. So those things kind of help me set a goal for myself, and or sorry, to get that setting those goals for myself helped me obtain my license and got me to be a full G license driver and what I am today. Now, the other thing that helped me um, was that I always had. So after I got my license, I said, okay, look, there was still some other things that I needed. I didn't really have a stable roof over my head. There was a lot of things that I needed to get done. And I kind of like checked it off the list because I said, okay, I got a car, got my license. Now I can move around. I can, look for, you know, get more customers and yada, 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 yada. And I did. I started my business riding a scooter. I think I mentioned this on the show before too, going business to business, offering the clean windows for $10. So I had to look back at that and be like, whoa, whoa, like, and I'm gonna talk about this too. Like, I looked back at it and I was like, whoa, like, okay, I actually made some progress. But the only reason why I made progress was because I set goals for myself. I put it out there in the universe and I said, look, this is what I want. Okay. Um, because we got to remember that success isn't about getting there first, right? Success is, nobody ever succeeds by um, trying to get to the top more than the other person. This is why I always tell a lot of artists and a lot of people that I know, especially in the streets, that it's all a myth if you really look at it, because everybody's really trying to compete and knock everybody down the chain and really be the king, right? Everybody wants to be that guy. But if we look at it, through decades and years and years and years and years, it just never happens. Like, there's actually never the guy, like, because there's going to be so much competition, right? But you can't compete and be the guy and compete against others if you don't have your stuff together, right? There's no competition. You don't become a competition. So when I see people competing, especially when they got way more fan base, and they have supposedly a more of a a culture going on, I don't see why they would want to compete with anybody when they're actually getting to become bigger than what they are. And if you notice, when you do that, it doesn't really set a standard for yourself. It doesn't put you in an original standpoint. It just always makes you feel like, oh, you gotta. And I'm not saying people, I'm not saying people can bite or biting each other or whatever, but like, when you're competing with somebody, you don't really kind of like you don't put yourself in that point where are in that position where you are original, right? Because you're worrying about what the other person's doing or what they have versus what you don't have or what you're not doing, right? So um that's the problem with that. And most people, they rush to keep up with others, and it kind of ends up building they end up building a life that they don't even want, because then you're not yourself. Now you're living the life of somebody else. You're following the path of somebody else. You're living somebody else's dream and somebody else's goals because you wanted to compete with them and be that way. That's not how you become successful, and that's not how you know you win. Okay, so remember, these are these next few episodes that we're going to be covering is about winning, right? And how you can, have a winning mindset and be in the lead without even worrying about other people or dealing with other people. Um, Now, meanwhile, those who stay focused on their own path also develop skills. Okay, so um, for me, because I've been like so concentrated on myself, I haven't been worried about what this person's doing and that what that person's doing. I'm actually developing skills. If you guys notice, I'm getting better at even speaking on my show. Right, I'm not. My words are, my pronounce, because I've been to school for this stuff. I went to school, but I just never, uh, you know, I never took the time to sit down and really work on myself. Okay, Daru, look, okay, look, your pronunciation and some of your word speeching could, or some of your words pronunciations can be a little bit better. How can you change that? Here's a goal. Write things down and study words and just do things a little bit differently, right? Because when you're doing journalism, it's you got to be kind of critique in what you're saying and how you're saying it, because you want to be able to gain an attraction, right? So, or you want to be able to be compelling, and you want people to be able to be drawn to you. So always remember that, right? Developing skills. It also develops confidence. Okay, so we know that when you stay focused on yourself, it allows you to be confident in yourself. It gives you the drive to be like, yes, I am this person. I can do this. I already did this before. I've been through this battle, and I fought this battle, and I can do it again. All right, that's the most important thing. And self awareness that lasts a lifetime. Okay, so self awareness is always the best, because once you're aware of something, then it doesn't really leave your thought process. It stays in your brain, right? Because you're aware of it. However, when you lose awareness, and I'm going to say this very clearly, you can lose awareness. People always say this, oh no, well, when you're aware, you're aware. Yes, but you can also lose awareness based on what we're talking about now, getting distracted with others, by others, and also worrying about others and competing with others versus worrying about yourself. Then your self-awareness becomes distracted. So be very careful of that, because awareness is the most important thing. If we do not have awareness, then we're kind of lost in the sauce, right? So, and remember what I talked about before, right? I said a flower doesn't really compete with a flower, right? A flower doesn't ask permission to bloom, it blooms. So we got to apply the same thing. The same thing applies to you. Focus on your craft, focus on your healing, focus on your business, and focus on your purpose. Simple, right? We celebrate other people's wins without even allowing them to distract you from your own mission, right? So that's what we should be doing. Celebrating other people's wins without allowing them to distract you from your own mission. That's fine. If you notice somebody's doing great in life and you want to acknowledge that, and you want to, support it, that's fine. I'm not saying don't support anybody or anything like that, but just don't allow that to distract you from your own mission. Okay. The more energy you spend comparing, the less energy you have available for creating. And I mentioned this about being original. If you are competing with other people and you're worried about this other person, you don't become unique. You don't become original. And then what? Right? Because you want to be different. That's what draws people to you. That's what makes you stand out. That's why it's called standing out, right? Because it's different. All right. So remember that. One day, okay, and I want everyone to listen to this. There's going to be one day when everyone else is just busy looking around. And when you look back and you realize and you see things, you're going to realize how far you've come. That's the day when you know that you won. I've just had to actually just went through this the other day, where I was just down on myself about my accomplishments and how long it's been taking. And really, in all trueness, it hasn't. It's been really quick. But it's because when I'm looking at social media, and I'm going to be honest, I'm looking at certain people and they got these flashy cars, they're on vacation and in pools, and I'm thinking, man, I haven't gone on a vacation in a while. But then I'm looking back and I'm thinking, oh, I go on vacations all the time. I spend time at the beach. Even though I don't leave the country, um, which I possibly could. And there's another goal that I have to set too, is because passport, right? I haven't got my passport done yet. So this is what I've been working on, because there's some other great news that I have coming for my subscribers and followers that you guys are gonna love, and it's just such a good new start to life. And so now I just need a passport, and and then once I get my passport, then I can start flying. So all that stuff is just based on me just setting goals for myself. That's it. Everybody, I can live the same life that they're living. I work, I do my thing, I pay my bills. But I looked at how far I've came from before, when I was sleeping in my truck and in my car, and we've talked about this on my other episodes, where I was homeless and I had nowhere to go, and no one wanted to take me in, and etc. And I took all that. I couldn't even call, like I said, my own mother. I couldn't even call her and ask her to stay at her house, right? And it was hard for me, and so I took all those things, and I kind of said, okay, some of it's my fault, and I can't blame everybody for my actions and things that I've put myself through and the bridges that I burned. So I got to remember that there's a consequence to every action. So I took that into consideration and learned what I was going to do, and how I was going to build myself to become a better person. And how I did that was by setting goals and by saying, okay, look, I don't want to stay here anymore. So I got 4 months. I am going to save this type of money, this, that, and I did it all in my car. This, that, goals, setting goals and everything. Like, I'm living in a house. Okay. Some people say, well, how can you function properly when you're on the street? I had no choice. I had no choice. I had to get out of that situation, or else I would have still been in the situation, because that's why a lot of people stay homeless too, is because they don't really have the resources and the things that they need to kind of move forward, right? A computer, a phone, access to certain things where they can actually sit down and make a goal. But I used my brain, and I thought, I can get over this. And I did. And I look back now, and I'm looking at my place, and I'm streaming here. Like, hello, you know, and I can show you, like, it's just, I made it to the point. It's not up to the highest standards that I want it to be, but I've made it to the point where I feel comfortable when I come home. When I walk in, it's comfortable, and I feel great. And I just can't. I just can't think about, like, I'm like, wow, like, God, man, like, you really answered my prayers, and that you were really walking with me through the whole thing. And I'm just like, to this day, I'm thinking, I did a lot. I made I did, I've come a long a long way, man. And, like, for people who know me, they know. And so this is what you got to ask yourself, right? Um, and realize how, not even ask yourself, you got to realize that that how far you've came versus from where you were before. Okay. um Now, I want you to take this, and I want you to take this with great grain. Okay. And uh and know that, not because you beat someone else in anything, right, that makes you better, or makes you better than them, right? And because you never you never stop building yourself. So when you stop building yourself, you lose the opportunity to kind of beat somebody else. and win against them, because you're just not building yourself. You can't win. How you can't win against anybody unless you've won yourself. Okay, so we need to take that in consideration, and we just always need to remember, guys, all right, that in life, you know, the most important thing is building yourself and becoming the better version of who you were yesterday. All right. Listen, man, I'm gonna wrap it up for today. I really thank, everybody for tuning in. If you have watched the show, and if you haven't watched this show and you like this message, if it resonated with you, I highly ask if you can share it with somebody who needs the reminder that their path is their own. Okay. But before we go, I just want to shout out to my sponsors as well. I want to shout out to Bark and Scratch Pet Foods Ltd, located at 2404 Danforth Road, or Danforth Avenue, sorry, here in East York. If you use AMTV, all right, AMPTV, you will get 10% off of all pet supplies. The promo is still going on, but it is for a limited time. And we ask everybody just to, if you need pet food, go there, because it's high end, all Canadian brand, high quality pet food and pet supplies there. And we know how the prices are getting high with things, and especially with food and pet supplies and that type of thing. So we ask sorry, that we're helping everybody out with a 10% discount if you head on down to the store and buy any supply in there. So if you buy two supplies, you get 10% off each supply. So that's 20% off. Okay, so any supply, 10% off if you go to the location, their location in person at 2404 Danforth Avenue, and that's in East York. Bark and Scratch Pet Foods Ltd. All right. We also want to shout out our affiliate and another business that I own, and it's called the App Store, and where we sell apparel. We got T-shirts, shorts, hats, and accessories, and a few other things that we're going to be adding to our store shortly. If you want to just get, go directly to our store while you're watching the show, all you got to do is scan this QR code on the left. I believe it's to the left. Yeah, on the left side of your on your left side. Just scan the QR code, and it will direct you right to our store. Okay, that's www.theappstore.com, and if you use Therapy Hub on there as well, there's also 15% discount that you can get on any of our supplies as well. But we thank everybody for tuning in. And like I said before, please share this with someone who needs the reminder. Okay. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep becoming a better person than you were yesterday. This is Therapy Hub signing off. Peace and love.